Okay, I know spoopy season is over. I mean, it's pretty much criminal season at this point, but I decided to make this video anyway. Today, I'm going to review one of my favorite animated movies, and I've never really talked about it on the channel a whole awful lot, so yeah. Of course, I'm talking about Monster House. I love this movie, simply because it's just really funny. And the comedy is just so subtle and you can easily miss it, and I just find that hilarious. So let's just jump into the review. First off, I'd like to say that this animation is really good. I found out recently that it was actually made to mimic claymation, and I think this is done very well. Everything looks very spooky and scary, and I think it fits the whole story of the movie. At the end of the day, it is still 3D animation, and several movies before it have tried to replicate this and failed, and I think it's actually done really well here. The characters are another really good part of this film. They're extremely realistic and relatable. We have DJ, a 12-year-old kid who wants to be treated like an adult. We have his best friend, Chowder, who doesn't exactly want to be treated like an adult yet and still wants to celebrate Halloween and do fun kid stuff. Then we have Jenny, this girl they meet who goes to a preparatory school and clearly has a bright future ahead of her, to say the least. Those were just the main three. There's tons of other super cool characters. While watching this movie, you truly do feel like these are real children, and I think that that's really great. As for the plot, it's very interesting, and I haven't really seen anything been done like it before. So the plot basically starts off with DJ, who likes to spy on his neighboring house, which is very creepy, and there's an old man that lives there named Mr. Nevercracker that yells at children. And then Chowder comes over and they were playing with a basketball, and somehow the basketball ends up on Nevercracker's lawn. Chowder tells DJ to go get it. DJ tries his best to get it, but Mr. Nevercracker comes out and starts yelling at him. After the confrontation, Mr. Nevercracker dies. DJ is pretty distraught by this while Chowder doesn't really care. But later that night, DJ receives a few very mysterious phone calls. He soon realizes that they're coming directly from Mr. Nevercracker's old house. So he calls up Chowder. Chowder messes around for a little bit, but then the house tries to eat them. They were pretty shook by this and decide to stay up all night spying on the house to see if it'll move. Then they meet Jenny for the first time through the telescope. They obviously both like her, and when she starts to approach the monster house, they go out and try to save her. Then the house tries to eat them all. After a few very funny attempts of them trying to impress her, they decide to call the police. And I have to say, these two police officers are some of the funniest characters in the entire movie. And the two police officers obviously don't believe them, and they say that if they ever try to pull anything like this ever again, they'll arrest them. But these three kids don't take no for an answer and visit one of the most epic gamers of all time, and he tells them that the house might have been possessed by a soul, and they have to strike it at the heart. Then they diverge a plan to get in the house. They were super close to actually going through with their plan of getting in the house, but then the cops arrive, and obviously they try to arrest them. But then the house tries eating the cops. The cops end up getting eaten, while the children survive and are officially inside the house. Then they go searching for the heart. And at this point, the movie starts to get a little bit slow. It's not as fast-paced as it was before. The kids pretty much go from room to room discovering new things, and each room is basically meant to be like a different part of like the human body, except in like house form, since the house is presumably possessed by a spirit. Earlier, the kids somehow made the house go to sleep using cold medicine, but when it wakes up, it tries to eat them again. They find a way to make it throw up, and they escape. After this, DJ nearly gets hit by an ambulance, but out of the ambulance emerges Mr. Nevercracker, who turns out didn't actually die. They decide to ask him about a few things that they found in the house, and he explains to them his backstory. He says that he once had a wife named Constance, which he rescued, and they decided to build a house together. But Constance really hated children, and one day she got into a terrible accident which involved children, resulting in her death. Her soul actually possessed the house, and this whole time Mr. Nevercracker was trying to protect the children who would go up to the house, since he knew that Constance hated children and would try to eat them or kill them. DJ says to Mr. Nevercracker that they have to put an end to this, but the house/Constance gets pissed and an epic final battle ensues. This is definitely one of the best parts of the movie because this final battle is so awesome. There's tons of suspense, it's really intense, that rhymed, and there's also tons of character development with the three kids. It's just so great. After this happens, Mr. Nevercracker has one last dance with the spirit of his wife, and then she presumably goes to heaven, or hell, I don't know. And then they all lived happily ever after, even the people who died, because it's revealed in a post-credit scene that they actually survived. By the way, I'd just like to say that it's really clever that they decided to show the fact that all of the people who died actually survived in a post-credit scene, because that makes the movie a whole lot more scarier for people who didn't stick around for the post-credit scene. But they still had to put it in there somewhere so they can get that PG rating. And that was Monster House. After I had watched this movie for the Halloween that just passed, it still remains one of my favorite animated films. And if you guys haven't seen it, I highly recommend you do. Because this movie is just funny, relatable, and it's just a really good movie all around. It also kind of reminds me of the video game Bully, and I think that's because they both have a sort of timeless feeling to them, meaning that they could really take place at any given time. You just have to use your imagination. Halloween is still over though, so I suggest just saving this for next Halloween. Trust me, you won't regret it.